Hi everyone, in this video we will have our first exposure to Rust syntax. Don't worry, I know its reputation and I know it's bad. And in this lesson there will be some things that we are not used to and new to us, but we are going to use them in depth in our later videos in this course. So in this video, just focus on understanding the syntax in general and don't worry about remembering the syntax at all because you are going to memorize it for sure in this lesson. So let's start with creating a variable. To create a variable, I'm going to say let, like I say in JavaScript. Then I'm going to say message. And my message is the classical hello world here. So as you can see, it looks like JavaScript syntax. I created my variable using the let keyword here. Then I have my variable name and the value of the variable. Now let's create an integer. For the integer, I'm going to say it's going to be i32 and the value will be 42. So now I have declared my variable with the let syntax here. My variable name is x. Then with the semicolon, I'm giving its type here. We are using 32-bit integer, so it's a type of integer and its type is written here after the semicolon and our value is 42. Don't worry about this i32. We are going to talk about integers in our later lessons. Now let's create a float. It's going to be pi. I'm going to say it's going to be f64 and the value is 3.14. Here our value is 3.14 and our type is f64, which is a float type. Next, let's create a Boolean saying is Rust fun. Obviously it's fun, so I'm going to say true. Here you can see that it's the classical Boolean. It's nothing special for Rust here. Next, I'm going to create a character. I'm going to say letter A. It's going to be a character. And let's write not 1 but letter A. And that's how we can create a char. So as you can see, there is nothing new to Rust here other than this i32 and f64, which we are going to talk about in the following lectures. Next, let's create a function. To create a function, we use the fn keyword here, then the name of the function. I'm going to create a function here to perform a simple calculation, simple addition. First, my parameter will be x and its type will be i32. Here, when we declare our variables, putting the type is not mandatory. But once we use these as a parameter, then we need to put its type. And next, I'm going to have another value, which is going to be y. It's also going to be i32. And this is going to return i32. So let's check out what we did. We created our function with fn keyword here, then the name of the function. Then we put our parameters and we said our parameters is type of i32. It's important, it's mandatory that we put the type of our parameters. Then for the return value, we use this arrow here and this indicates what we are going to return in the function. And this is the type of value that we are going to return in this function. And I'm going to say return x plus y. So this is pretty routine in many programming languages, but we have a different way to do the same thing in Rust. Instead of saying return x plus y, I can also say x plus y directly. And if I don't put a semicolon at the end, it means return this value. So I can either put this like that, or I can say it like this. There's nothing wrong with writing it like this, but to be honest, since we can write it in a different way, many Rust developers use the style here like this. Again, you can use any type you want, but I found this helpful after you got used to it in many cases, since it's less work and also it's easy to understand once you look at a long function where the value returns. Also, Rust is an expression-based language. Here our expression is x plus y, which returns a value, and that's i32. So let's see how our control flow works. First, I'm going to create a variable here. I'm going to say x equals 42. And as you can see, I created an x here and I created x again in here. In many programming languages, we cannot do that. but in Rust, we can redeclare a variable which overrides the value. So instead of 42, if I say 4 here, now I have a variable called x with a value of 4. So this is called shadowing. We are going to talk about this later again, but just for your knowledge, we can redeclare variables, which is no problem for us. We are basically overriding our earlier variable. Here we are going to say if x is bigger or equal to 0, then we are going to say println x is not negative. Then we are going to say else println x is negative. I know you are looking at this exclamation mark here, and this indicates that this is not a function, but it's a macro. We are going to talk about difference between macros and functions in a very general way in our later lectures. For now, all you need to know is that this is not a function but a macro, but we are using this as the same way that we are using functions. So without worrying about this exclamation mark at the end, you can use this as a function to print out variables for now. And this is, as we talked, pretty straightforward. It's very similar to other programming languages. Only difference is that we don't have this parentheses around the expression here. Other than that, there's nothing new with control flow here. Now, let's see how while loop works. I have a variable here, and this mute means it's a mutable variable, and these all are immutable variables we created here. But again, don't worry, just try to get hold on the syntax, and we are going to talk about this in our later lectures very soon. Here I will say while I is smaller or equal to 5, println I. Then I'm going to say I plus equals 1. So let's see what we did here. Again, the while loop declaration is same or is very similar with other programming languages. We don't have parentheses in Rust, and that's our difference. And here we have our println. Between these quotation marks, we have parentheses. This indicates that whatever we are going to provide after this quotation marks, we are going to use this variable instead of this parentheses. So it's just a placeholder for I. For the first run, it's going to be 1. And for the second one, it's going to print 2, and it's going to go like this. So let's run and see how it works. I'm going to open up a new terminal here. Now in my terminal, I'm going to say cargo build, which is going to build my project. So with this build, we are actually converting this code to a machine code. So that's a middle process. And once we run the code, which means that we want to run the code that we're converting using this build statement. Now, as you can see, we have a couple of warnings here because we don't use these variables that we declared, but we have no warning. So if we say cargo run, we can see our output here. It said x is not negative, and then we have 1 through 5. And it said x is not negative because of this line. Our x is 4. If it's bigger or equal to 0, then we were going to write x is negative, which it does. Next, we had our loop, and what we expect is to write the value of this I through 1 to 5, and that's what it does exactly. As you can see, we use these brackets here as a placeholder. We are just putting the value of I inside this bracket, this notation, so that we have the values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not the values I inside the brackets. So that's the basic syntax of Rust. Obviously, there is more to that. It's just a quick overview. I know there are some new syntax. It's not very familiar in some sense, but many parts of this syntax is very familiar if you have worked with other programming languages like JavaScript or even C. Thank you very much. That's all for this video, and I'm going to see you on the next one.